For the last few years now, the farm assurance programs have been recommending that people do have a dynamic test on their milking machine each year. And so we're starting to see a bit of a shift towards that. I suppose one thing that we do need to be a little bit wary of is this issue that not all dynamic tests seem to be getting performed to the same standard. So I don't know if you've had any experience of different interpretations of what a dynamic test actually is.
As we've mentioned previously in these discussions, there can be such a wide variety of what people are calling a dynamic test. And I've certainly been to farms where they seem to think they've had a dynamic test, but once we've discussed it and actually tried to go through the results, they've maybe had a milking time visit.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we should touch on that right now and actually talk about what you should be seeing if you're getting a dynamic test done.
Questions I would ask even before the test has been performed is, will you be able to tell me how well my cows were stimulated for milk letdown?
Yeah.
From the data. Will you be able to tell me whether the liners are the right choice for these cows? Will you be able to tell me whether we are over milking these cows? And then will you be able to tell me whether the system vacuum is appropriate for these cows at peak milk flow?
Yeah.
And we can go into a lot more detail in particular things, and there are some subtleties that are out there, but those are the basic questions that we really should be able to address reliably.
So we've already described the dynamic test in that we are attaching a small bit of kit to a milking cluster or several milking clusters and leaving it on there for the whole of milking. And that's the first thing to watch out for, really. Are the measurements being taken remotely? Because we don't want those measurements to be influenced by someone standing next to the cow while she's being milked. And are they being taken throughout milking? Because if we're just taking a few measurements from a few cows, it's quite easy to get a false impression of the machine performance with that particular herd.
Just to be clear, what do you mean by remotely?
So remotely means that we can measure the vacuum down at cow level without having to stand next to that cow. We could be at the other end of the parlour, or we could be outside of the parlour completely.
So it's a hands-off.
So it's a hands-free approach, where, as far as the cow's concerned, there's nothing different. She can't feel any particular change going through the liners or through the cluster. There's no difference in weight, and there's certainly no operator stood next to her while she's trying to let down her milk. So these are all things that you need to keep an eye on to make sure that the dynamic test you're having done is actually going to be useful in telling you what's going on with your herd.
A decision is only as good as the data it was based upon.
Nicely put, Dan, nicely put. We spoke at the beginning of this session as to the extra information we get from a dynamic test compared to a static test. And so if we're not getting all of that information, what's the point? It's not really a full dynamic test.
Take it for a proper test drive.
So I guess we've covered quite a bit of ground in this discussion so far. What we're basically saying is we get loads more information from a dynamic test compared to a static test. That can really allow us to fine-tune the milking machine and the milking process so that it's specific to our herd of cows. That not all dynamic tests are equal. A lot of people are passing off fairly minimalist testing as dynamic tests. And there's a bunch of questions that you can ask when you're booking in your dynamic test to make sure that you're getting the real deal there.
And if you've got any questions, you can always get in touch. You'll have seen the link for the website, www.advancedmilking.com.
Check out our YouTube channel, check out our website, and any questions, get in touch through the website.
We've got a YouTube channel. Unbelievable.